We're back with another iteration of the full New York Jets mock offseason. Let's not waste any time and jump right in. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and sorry for the delay in the episodes. One, because I do a ton of research when it comes to these videos. So if you guys wouldn't mind, please go ahead and hit the like button and the subscribe button if you like this content and how much time it takes me to put up. But more importantly, I had to calm down. I'm going to be very, very honest, and a lot of you guys already know this from the shows that I do with Green Bean and Ryan and Connor of New York Jets Flight Dog. Like all of these guys, I think it was very, very obvious that I wanted to keep Aaron Rodgers. And when we found out that, hey, that wasn't going to happen, we weren't going to keep Aaron Rodgers around. One, I needed a second to calm down. And two, I just needed to do a lot more research on certain positions that I wasn't really looking at before and changing, I guess, the way that I was attacking free agency and the draft and all of those things because, well, you have to reevaluate when you get new information. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to take a deep dive into what a post-Aaron Rodgers New York Jets world is going to look like. But I think I'm going to take it from this perspective. One of the things that I noticed, and I think a lot of people noticed, is that when they were looking at the New York Jets offensive and defensive coaching staffs, one of the things that we realized is that on the offensive side of the ball for the coaching staff, we have a lot of rookies in their positions, coaching players when it comes to quarterback coach and offensive line coach and tight ends coach and offensive coordinator. But when we look at the defensive side of the ball, it's just full of veterans, from the fact that our head coach is a former defensive coordinator, our defensive coordinator is a former head coach. And so the thought process that started naturally coming into my mind was, well, if you're going to give any side of the ball a ton of rookies or a ton of really, really young players, you should do it to the side of the ball that also isn't trying to figure out how to do their jobs at the NFL level. And so that's what today is going to be. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into what happens if we get aggressive in free agency on the offensive side of the ball and kind of leave some of the holes that we need to fill on defense for the draft, so that the veteran coaches get the young guys and that the young coaches get the veteran players. And that's what we're going to dive into. So let's not waste any more time. We're going to start by going over what are the New York Jets needs when it comes to this draft. And it's pretty simple. It's changed a little bit, and some things that I've kind of done and changed a little bit. We obviously, on the offensive side of the ball, need a quarterback, 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, and offensive linemen just in general. And I'll explain that when we get there. And then we definitely need depth at the interior of the offensive line. And then on the defensive side of the ball, we need 3 safeties, 2 interior defensive linemen, a quarterback, an edge, and a linebacker. And we're not going to be able to fill everything. We're not going to be able to fill every single position on the New York Jets team, but we're going to try as hard as we can. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to start by talking about who's gone and how are we going to create cap space. And this is where we're going to start here. First things first, Aaron Rodgers. We're going to cut Aaron Rodgers and save $10 million this year from his cap hit. And we get more money post June 1st because the expectation is that the New York Jets are going to do a post June 1st cut, so that we get some of the dead cap hit this year and some of the dead cap hit next year. I would just take all of it in this year and just kind of bite the bullet this year and be free and clear of Aaron Rodgers in 2026, especially with the cap space getting a massive boost from what was originally projected. We're cutting Devontae Adams, and we're going to save $30 million there. Cutting Alan Lazard to save $6.5 million. Cutting Greg Zuerlein to save $2.5 million. And cutting Michael Clemens. I don't care how much we save on cutting Michael Clemens. Just get him off my football team. He's not a good football player. I don't want him on the New York Jets. And honestly, Michael Clemens is going to be the litmus test, in my opinion, on what to think about this coaching staff. If Michael Clemens is on this roster week 1, we've got some problems, but that's that. Now, we made a bunch of cuts. We've created a ton of cap space, about $70 million in cap space. What can we do with that money? And we got aggressive in free agency, and this is what we're starting with. Last time we did this, you guys saw that I went out and I brought a ton of our own players back. We're not doing that this time, one, because a couple of things changed, but two, I just don't necessarily think that we're going to prioritize keeping the guys that were part of the previous regime in town, but there are a couple of players that are going to be brought back. Number one is going to be Brandon Echols. I think I'm going to bring him in 1 year, $3 million, and have him just be your de facto cornerback two for the New York Jets. It's going to be Sauce, Echols, and Michael Carter II. That's your cornerback trio. And I think that that's more than adequate for you to have as a defensive back trio. Let's not forget that Brandon Echols has almost like led this team in interceptions, like the last 3 years playing part-time. But also, we're not going to do that stupid thing where like Sauce is going to get his side of the field and Echols is going to get his side. No. Sauce is going to more than likely follow wide receiver ones, and Brandon Echols is more than good enough to be on a prove-it deal and cover wide receiver twos in the NFL. We're also going to bring back Tyler Conklin. Now, why am I bringing back Tyler Conklin? Well, a lot of people don't realize this, but we're eating money with Tyler Conklin, right, this year because we have a dead cap hit because we brought him back. And my whole thing is like, okay, if we're going to eat a dead cap hit or like a void year on his contract and keep him around, might as well just pay him and to keep him around. He is, I think, a good enough tight end. And like I said, we have a lot of rookies on the offensive side of the ball. We know what you get with Tyler Conklin. It's a relatively high floor, relatively low ceiling. Like he's just a good dump off option. He's got pretty secure hands. And so we're just going to keep Tyler Conklin around. It's not going to be that expensive. 3 years, $27 million comes out to about $9 million per year. And then he's going to be on every single one of them because I think that he's a special teamer, he's a special team ace, and you kind of need one of those every year. Irvin Charles, 1 year league min deal. That's that. And so now we get into the exciting part. Now we're going to start talking about, if these are the only guys that we brought back, what are we doing in free agency? And that's exactly where we get very, very excited. But before we do that, our guys getting paid. None of this has changed from before. It's the same 4 guys that are getting paid. It's the same deals. And so it's Garrett Wilson, 3 years, $75 million. Sauce Gardner, 4 years, $84 million. Elijah Vera Tucker, 4 years, $60 million. Jermaine Johnson, you take his 5th year option. And that's that. I think that's a very, very... I think that's just good business. Elijah Vera Tucker, when he's been on the field, and he showed us that he can play a full season last year, is phenomenal. Sauce Gardner is 2-time All-Pro, 2-time Pro Bowl. Like, he's one of the best cornerbacks in the league. You got to do that. And you have to convince Garrett Wilson to stay. 3 years, $75 million is more than enough for a wide receiver of his talents to stick around in the New York. And it's going to be in, like, again, it's in the range of putting him in the top end of wide receiver paydays, but not in that tier of wide receivers of your Jamar Chases, your Justin Jeffersons, and those guys. And that makes a ton of sense. He should be in that tier right below them, and that's where he is. And boom, we get to keep our guys. Free agent signings, because I forgot the order of the things, and we went pretty ham in free agency. So let's work through this. We're going to start with the quarterback spot, and we're going to get quarterback Jameis Winston, 2 years, $13 million. That is $6.5 million per year. Why are we going the Jameis Winston route over, let's say, some of the other quarterbacks in the NFL that are available? And why are we avoiding a quarterback in the draft? There is none of these quarterbacks in this draft have a projection of being an NFL starter for a long time outside of Cam Ward. And I do not feel comfortable trading any assets to go and get Cam Ward up in the top of the draft. And so regardless of what happens, there's not a single quarterback in this draft that projects to be an NFL starter anytime soon. So what your plan should be is getting to 2026. Well, if that's the case, why are we giving him a 2-year deal? Well, the idea with the 2-year deal is that if Jameis Winston can come to the New York Jets and have success, which I think he can, we know what you're getting with Jameis. It's an electric arm and just really, really suspect decision-making, right? He can throw you 30 touchdowns, but he can also throw you 30 interceptions. And you're hoping that Tanner Engstrad can bring in some stability and, ball security to the offense with what he learned from Detroit. And I really like the money aspect of where Jameis Winston is at quarterback. It's not too expensive. It's not affecting the cap. And there is a real possibility here of Jameis coming back in 2026 for whoever the rookie quarterback that we have to give him a year to sit, especially if Jameis does help lead the New York Jets to a playoff. And let's just all be honest here. Jameis Winston is a fantastic human being, and he's awesome, and he's dope, and we should have a weekly Jameis Winston show that just, an episode drops weekly. I would sign up for that immediately. And so Jameis Winston is the quarterback. And then we're going to go out and get a wide receiver. And I didn't want to go out and spend a ton of money at wide receiver. I just kind of wanted to get a guy who, is good enough. And Darius Slayton is exactly that. He's a guy who's going to come in. He's immediately going to be wide receiver 2 for you in the NFL. You know what kind of level of the production you're going to get out of him. He's a veteran. He doesn't need to be taught how to do his position or how to play his position. He's 28 years old, and so you're getting him kind of towards the back end of his prime. 3 years, $42 million. That puts him at about $14 million per year, give or take. And so again, it kind of puts you in a really, really good spot with the wide receiver room and the quarterback room and just getting the weapons and building the offense. Sticking on the offensive side of the ball, we're going to go and get interior offensive lineman, right guard Kevin Zeitler, 1 year, $6 million. He was last year was at Detroit and was a fantastic addition for them. And I know what you're thinking. Why are we getting an interior offensive lineman in free agency? We don't need an interior offensive lineman. We need a right tackle. You're absolutely right. The problem is that right tackles are ridiculously expensive, and we have a ton of holes on the roster. And you can see that we haven't even gotten to one of the other marquee signings that I'm making with safety Justin Reed, but we still needed to address the offensive line. And the thing is, and the reality is that we have a player that we know can play right tackle at an exceptionally high level, and that's Elijah Vera Tucker. And I feel more than confident saying, okay, AVT, you're bumping out to right tackle, and we're going to bring in Kevin Zeitler to be a veteran presence in that offensive line room. He knows the system and the scheme because he ran it last year. And in the draft, it opens you up to now getting either a right tackle or a right guard or a center and have a plan for the future instead of just getting a young kid, throwing him to the fire. You have a plan in place for year 1, and it gives you the flexibility to go into year 2 and get a guy. And so we went big getting veterans on the offensive side of the ball, but you still got to address the defensive side of the ball, and I took a big swing. I wanted a superstar safety, and I went out and I got Justin Reed, 3 years, $42 million, and I think that's wrong. I think I wrote it wrong. It's supposed to be 3 years at $15.5 million per year, not 42. Give me a second, and I'm going to do some quick maths. 15.5 times 3 is 46.5. Sorry, I wrote that number down. So 3 years, $46.5 million per year. You got to take a big swing. We need to revamp that entire safety room. And Justin Reed is a winner, a Super Bowl winner, knows what it's like to be in winning organizations and on winning defenses. And that's exactly what you want to bring in to change the culture. And that's kind of what we've targeted when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. We're taking a shot on middle linebacker Dre Greenlaw, 1 year, $7 million. Let's not forget that Dre Greenlaw popped his Achilles in the Super Bowl 2 years ago and did not play for a majority of 2024. And so the idea here is just taking a swing on a guy coming off of an injury who's a bigger body, who's just a bigger human, to really quarterback the middle of that linebacker room for you. Unfortunately, I don't think that Jamien Sherwood is going to come back. I think that he's going to end up in, San Francisco or Atlanta following the head coach and the defensive coordinator that drafted him and developed him. But I think that if he's going to end up going to San Francisco, we should take one of the San Francisco guys. And this is a really, really good prove-it deal for your middle linebacker spot. And it's a really, really high upside swing with Dre Greenlaw. And I wanted just something different on the interior of the defensive line. We've seen a ton of Levi Onwuzurike, and you're going to see that name a ton because, honestly, I think he follows, Glenn to the New York Jets, but I wanted to give you a different name to look at, and that's why we went Thierry Tart, 1 year, $3 million, had a phenomenal year with the, Los Angeles Chargers last year. I almost called them San Diego. With the Chargers last year. And so it's just, hey, we need a body. Thierry Tart, more than good enough to give you, 400, 500 snaps on the interior defensive line. And this interior defensive line class in the draft is really deep, so you can get one in the draft as well. And that is all of the free agent signings that we're going to get. And the idea there is, like I said, we've addressed a lot of things when it comes to the New York Jets in free agency, and now it opens us up to the draft. And just like in the last episode, we're going to do a full mock draft live so that you guys can kind of hear and understand my thought process on how we're going to go about this, positional value, everything like that. And let's just kind of see what happens, what we need, and everything like that. Now that we know that we're in this situation, one of the things that I'm definitely going to try to do at the 7th position is trade back. I need more assets in 2026, and this draft class is incredibly deep. And with all of the guys that I would necessarily want at 7 being gone, Abdul Carter, Cam Ward, Ted McMillan, Mason Graham, there really isn't a guy at 7 that I'm like, you have to pick. So let's hear what the offers are around the NFL, and let's see what we can get. And this Pittsburgh Steelers pick right here really, really intrigues me because dropping back to 11 or 12 is really not going to net you anything substantial in 2026. However, it can if you drop back to 21, and this is where I'm going to look at trying to get an additional third-round pick in this year's draft, moving back to 21, and getting another one. What if I gave them our third for their second? This, I think I would do this so that you go from 92 to 53 and 108 to 85, plus you get a 1. And let's see what happens. And they accepted the trade. It is a little bit lopsided for the New York Jets, and it's in favor of the New York Jets. But honestly, that makes sense. You need to pay us to leave this spot. You need to pay us to not take whoever it is that you're taking. And so the New York Jets walk away as bandits in this situation. And now we're in a spot that makes a lot more sense for the New York Jets. We're at 21, and there's a lot of really good players here that you can get that are going to give you a ton of upside. And honestly, one of the guys that I'm looking at here is Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver out of Ohio State, who has just been nothing but productive the last 4 years at Ohio State, but also Matthew Golden, a guy who's flying up boards. But do you really want to go offensive weapon in the first? And if you are, is wide receiver where you want to go? A lot of people who have been fans of the channel know that I am a big fan of Colston Loveland. A huge fan of Colston Loveland. But I kind of... See, this is interesting. This is interesting because now I'm looking at this draft and I'm starting to think that, Membu might be the right pick here. You take Membu, he's a right tackle, and then Zietler just becomes a backup. AVT stays at right guard. Membu comes in, and he's your right tackle. and you've just solidified the trenches in a big, big way because there isn't really a defensive player. Like, I would love Jihad Campbell. I really, really would. And there's a likelihood that he sees the field in year one. But Membu I think you got to go Membu here. I think for sure Membu sees and Campbell's available at 42. So you just take Campbell here. So, like, this works out perfectly. You get your right tackle and you get your heir apparent in the middle linebacker room, and everything works out. And so, wow, that really worked out for the New York Jets. I'm a big, big fan of that. And we're back in the second. And now is when we start looking on the defensive side of the ball. Now we start looking on the defensive line. Let's look at the defensive line. Let's look at the interior defensive linemen and edge that are available and see if there's anybody that's really like screaming out. I think we should probably prioritize interior defensive linemen over let's say an edge player. So let's do that. And is there anyone here that's really screaming out to me? I'm a big fan of Deion Walker, but I would rather take Deion Walker with our 85 pick than our 53 pick. So then let's look at safety. Is there a safety here that I would want to take? We do need to find a running mate for Justin Reed. Not really. We do still need a wide receiver. Jaden Higgins is available, and I think, honestly, that's probably the best value, is just taking Jaden Higgins here, and, like, you just don't blink twice. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Jaden Higgins, big, big body target. You get to round 3, and, again, round 3 kind of works out in our favor because now we're back here, and we can get the safety that we want. If we're looking there, Deion Walker is available. But there are other guys that you can get. Zeke Biggers is a big, large human that can fit there. I think you got to get a safety, and I think Lathan Ransom is going to give you a really good kind of like box safety in and around, just tackling machine, and you need a safety. Like, you need a safety. You need to walk away with a safety. And so I'm going to take a safety in that situation and hope that the draft falls well for us. Definitely need an interior defensive lineman now. Let's look at the interior defensive lineman, see if there's anybody that's screaming to us. Simeon Barrow kind of fits a similar mold to what we already have. Tim Smith, kind of a bigger, just larger human being. CJ West, also kind of like just a bigger, larger human being, but I like CJ West a little bit more of an all-around player. I'm going to go CJ West out of Indiana. You got to get an interior defensive lineman. Like, you just got to get a guy there. Nick Nash, really, really big fan of Nick Nash. Connor Colby, also a big fan of Connor Colby. But I'm just trying to see if there's anybody that, like, just jumps out at me and you're just like, oh, this is great value at this position. You got to get this guy. Not really. Do you take? No, I don't think you take a developmental guy on the offensive line at this position. Let's look at the safeties. Is there another safety that we're looking at? No, not really. Isn't anybody here? Let's look at the tight end room. Jackson Hawes, Luke Lackey. I like Luke Lackey, but we can get Luke Lackey later. And that's who I was kind of targeting as like a developmental guy that we can get. We still need a safety. We still need an edge. Let's look at an edge. Let's try to take an edge here. Let's see if there's anybody that I look at and I go, okay, this is good value. Braden Swinson, LSU, SEC guy, good stats. I haven't watched a lot of his stuff, and so I'm just kind of looking at their measurables. 6'5", 265, 3 sacks last year by Jaw Joyner. Brady Swinson is 6'4", 250. 9 sack. I think I'm just going to go with the SEC guy and see what you get. Big school, big competition. You definitely need the edge, and so you're going to have to take an edge. And then we're here at 185, and here's to hoping that Lackey is still here, and he is. And I don't necessarily care about all of that value. I'm not risking losing Luke Lackey. I think he's a phenomenal, phenomenal talent, especially got to take tight ends out of Iowa. And then last but not least, I wanted to get another safety, but the problem is like I'm not in love with any of the safeties here, like at this spot. But I think more importantly, you got to get a kicker. You got to get a kicker. And a lot of these, I know that this isn't going to do like really, really well in terms of like the grading system, but these are the two guys. I'm just going to take the highest ranked kicker. I haven't done any kicker scouting because like that's crazy. Why would I waste time doing that? But this is our mock draft. This is what we did. Let's give them a second to see how it grades us out. In the first round, we traded back with the Steelers getting their first round pick in next year's draft, walking away with an extra one, but also trading a third in for a second and a fourth in for a third. We walked away in round one with Armand Membu, the right tackle out of Missouri. In the second, our first of the 2 second-round picks, we went Jihad Campbell's, and then we went Jaden Higgins, getting a linebacker and a wide receiver, just in case Greenlaw doesn't necessarily work out, and just getting another body in that wide receiver room to help newly signed Slayton and then newly extended Garrett Wilson. In the third round, we went safety Lathan Ransom to partner Justin Reed as the strong safety to his free safety. And then in round 5, we went CJ West, the interior defensive lineman out of Indiana, and Braden Swinson, the edge out of LSU. And then in round 6, we went Luke Lackey and then Ryan Fitzgerald, really only leaving the only spot that we weren't able to address. And by the way, they gave me a B for this overall, for this draft class. The only position that we weren't able to fill from the original list of this is all of the positions and this is the everything that we need to fill is the third safety. And I think that's pretty good because we walked away with a quarterback, 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, an interior offensive lineman, 2 safeties, 2 interior defensive linemen, a quarterback, an edge, and 2 linebackers. I think we did pretty well. So guys, let me know in the comment section below, what did you guys think of this offseason? Would you be okay with this offseason? Would you not be okay with this offseason? Tell me all your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And if you're this far into the video, guys, stick around. We're going to be doing a lot more live shows. We're going to be doing a draft giveaway. We're going to be doing a bunch of stuff. So hit the subscribe button to be notified about all of that stuff. And my name is Tigo, and I'm out of here. Go Jets.